All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us again on another edition of the Drum Candy Podcast. And as I said, today we are welcoming back for part two one of the baddest guys around, the great Kenny Washington, Uncle Wash. Thanks for coming back, man.
Mr. Wendt, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, man. Great to see you in the vinyl room on the second floor of the Shea Wash Castle, man. How you feeling?
Oh, everything is okay. How about you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. So last time, I can't believe it, man. The last time we did one of these was almost a year ago, which is incredible.
Wow, man.
I know, man. Yeah, time flies. And last time we were talking about a lot of your early development and your early career. And I thought today maybe we could focus on some of the records that you're on, since you're on, several hundred. There were a few that I wanted to talk about, and sort of some of the things that you've learned from some of the great masters that you've worked with thus far in your career. Is that cool?
Yeah, it's fine.
Beautiful. So why don't we go back to not the very beginning of your recording career, but one of the first records that you're on, and that is the now classic Betty Carter, The Audience. Recorded at the Great American Music Hall in 79. You were with Betty for about 2 years or so, is that right?
Well, I joined her in September of 78.
Okay, and then you were with her till about 1980 or so?
Yeah, matter of fact, yeah, January.
Okay.
Because right as when we made that record, well, right after that, or not shortly after that, I guess shortly after that, that's when the band more or less broke up.
Gotcha.
It was earlier in that year. It was definitely earlier in that year. Right after we made that record. I don't even think the record was out quite yet. Or it might have been out, but early February, that's when that's when I left.
Gotcha.
John Hicks had already, had split because they had a falling out. And Curtis stayed, and his replacement, Hicks' replacement, was Mulgrew Miller. That's how I first met Mulgrew.
Wow. Did you play any gigs with Betty and Mulgrew or no?
No, and I almost stayed.
Yeah.
I almost stayed with Betty because I wanted to play with Mulgrew. Of course, years later, Mulgrew said, "Yeah, man," I could hear him now. "Yeah, man, I know why you left. You left because I was playing so sad, man. That's why you left." I said, no, that at all, man. But I had been with Betty long enough. I wanted to do something else, and that's when Ronnie Matthews had called me to play with Griff, because I was asked to play with Griff 2 other times before that. So I figured the third time's a charm, man. I'm gonna leave Betty, play with Griff, but. I made a couple of rehearsals. With Mulgrew, man. And I remember that when he, she heard about him through Mercer Ellington.
Right.
Mercer Ellington Orchestra. And so she contacted him. And so he came to her house for a rehearsal.
Gotcha.
Rehearsal audition. And I remember when he sat down at the piano, because there wasn't any music, because John Hicks had all that stuff up in his dome,
Yeah.
And so she had some music, but it was all messed up and everything,
Yeah.
And Mulgrew came in there, man, and iced those parts, man. And I remember when he first started playing, the smile on her face, it was like,
Yeah.
I never played any gigs with him, but you were saying, no, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all right. So let's go back to just your time with Betty. So as a young drummer, before we get to the audience recording, what were some of the things that you learned from working with her as a young drummer and just a young musician in general?
She taught me a lot about control of the instrument. She would play tempos, man, that were unbelievably fast. And then the next tune right after that would be something incredibly slow.
Mm.
And and all I still remember this. Like one of the numbers she would play would be like Trolley Song or My Favorite Things. And see, so when the tune would end and we had finished, and the audience would be applauding. See, so I knew the next tune would be a ballad. And I never forget just putting my hands, just switching from, and I almost switched from the sticks to the brushes. And I remember she's talking to the audience. I just put my hand down on the snare drum and the floor tom-tom. And I felt like I had the St. Vitus dance. You know what they used to go for dance? I was like, like I was nervous, you know. But then the next number was going to be a ballad. And with her, there was no sweeps on the brushes, you know. So she didn't want you to play, you know, time with the brushes on the snare drum. She didn't like that at all. She wanted that open space. So what she wanted you to do was to play the ride cymbal on beats 1 and 3 and the hi-hat on 2 and 4. So it would be ding, ding. That's all she wanted to hear. But that was the easy tempo to play, man. She would have it in here. Ding, ding. And man, you don't want to rush or be late for each beat. I mean, because she would give you one of them looks. And the thing was, man, I mean, even from the beginning, she had a way, she wouldn't count off the tempo either, being that tempo. She had this thing like where her arm, her fist would be up in the air. And then she would bring her arm down, and when her fist was parallel with the floor, bam, that was the downbeat. But to make it even harder than that, you had to feel the space between the first and second beat. So in other words, the tempo could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or it could be 1, 2, 3. It could be anything, man. You know, and so you had to feel that space between, you know, that first and second beat so that you could come in on that, second beat. And you better not be late either. Or you better not be early. You know, she would give you one of them looks, you know, she would turn around and give you one of them looks and you felt like you were shot with a machine gun. You felt like Swiss cheese, man, you know?
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about control, you know, how to go from one tempo to the next.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I learned about endurance playing fast, because she had some tunes like where she would, you know, I mean, the tempos would be fast and she would sing on those tempos, and she really could sing. Betty had great time, man. Mm-hmm. That was the best thing about her, was her time. You know, how she would phrase either as a ballad or those up tempos. I mean, she would like on a ballad, of course, you know, you get to know the lyrics of these tunes, and sometimes her time, she would lag and she would be so far behind, and then somehow or another, you know, because of her rhythmic sense, she would fit all those words in, and they might be coming up into the top of the chorus. Bam! It was unbelievable, man. You know, that was, for me, that was the best thing about her, was, you know, her time, you know, and how she, you know, her phrasing, you know.
Yeah. When it came to dynamics, did you find that you had to really sort of develop the ability to play a lot softer with her, or was it kind of muscular, or dynamically, what was it like?
It was all the above.
Yeah.
You had to watch her, you know, and she had these different moves, and you knew when to bring it down, or when, you know, she wanted you to play, you know, muscular or strong. So it was very dynamic. She, all these dynamics and everything, she would, she would use, for different effects on, on different tunes. So
Wow.
it was amazing, man. I mean, and you had to remember, we had enough, when back in those days, we had enough tunes in the book that if a club owner asked us to play 5 sets of music, we could play 5 or 6 different sets. She would rehearse. She would, the way she would rehearse the band, she had all these ideas, man. I mean, all that stuff that you hear on those records, those are her arrangements. She came up with most of that stuff, or at least, the beginning of it came from her. And then, of course, it would just develop into something else. And, I would come to her, and she had like, and I don't know the name of this book. I was never able to find out the name of this book, but she had this table. She had this like table. It was like a small, older looking table, and it had this big book. It was like a thesaurus. It had this it was like a thick Webster's dictionary, a thesaurus. And I don't know, she must have had this book since she was a teenager or a kid, because I don't know how many pages had been ripped off of that book. It certainly didn't have the front cover. That is long gone, And I mean, because she had used it so much and it had been through so many different places over the years. But this book sat on the table by its lonesome. And this book had all these different tunes. I mean, just all kinds of, obscure tunes, and she would go in that book and she played a little bit of piano, and she'd figure out which tune would interest her. And then she would sit down and bang on the piano, and we'd come to rehearsal, or maybe it might be a sound check, and she might already be there, whatever. So she's sitting down there noodling on the piano. And then, so she's formulating stuff in her mind, arrangements and things. And I would hear, and then we'd be at her house, and, she would be playing. And then I might say, Betty, what's that you're playing? Oh, that's just something I'm working on, kid. Okay. She wouldn't say anything more, And so then it would develop, and then so it'd be another rehearsal, maybe a day or two later, a week, might be a month. And then John Hicks would be at the rehearsal at this time. And so then she would say, hey, John, check this out. And John would look over her shoulder as she's playing, and he would get an idea. Of course, he would dress the chords up because he's a real pianist. And then she would tell everybody what she wanted, or it would work into something. And then next thing you know, with this tune, we'd have an arrangement, be a super hip arrangement too, man. I mean, and so she had all these tunes, and we would come up with these new things. And so you figure for the next gig, that's what she's gonna play. No. First set, she wouldn't play them. No. Second set, she should play them second set. No. Third set, no. So I should get to him the next night. No, second night, nothing. See, so days are rolling by. So then all of a sudden she'll just pull 1 or 2 of those tunes out, and you better know it. She kept my mind sharp.
Yeah.
She kept my mind sharp. She was something else, man.
That's amazing. Did you get a chance to solo a lot with her or not?
No. The only time John Hicks, the trio would play 2 numbers before she came on.
Yeah.
And the rest of it was her show.
Yeah.
So I would get a chance to play some with the trio. John would have, trio tunes, but for the most part, after that, it was, it was her show.
Yep.
She's the only vocalist that I know of that could start with a ballad. And of course, the ballad would be so slow you could have lunch between the beats. You know, she would start her set like that. And she would work her way up. And by the end of the set, her programming and the way she would put tunes together were amazing. And by the end of the set, the people would be going crazy, yelling for more. I've seen her do that plenty of times. So I learned a lot about pacing.
Yeah.
You know, she would also, you know, we would be on our way to a club, right? And she would say, "Hey, kid," and she called me kid. "Did we play this tune last time we was here?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. No, we didn't play that one." So I said, "Well, did we play? Do you remember we played this one?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "Okay, we won't play that one." And then she would say it constantly. She would say, if you're playing the same thing every time you go to a club, you're not thinking. She wanted to have fresh music every time she would go to that club, to whatever the club was. Of course, there might be people that would request certain things and she would do those, but for the most part, she was into the next batch of tunes. She wanted some new stuff that the audience hadn't heard, and she felt that if you were doing the same stuff, she said, you're not thinking, which to me was very interesting, that, she really cared about, the audience and the president and music presentation. Sometimes she might pick out a set and she would get on the stage and then she would automatically change because of the way the audience felt. She could feel that audience. So what she thought would work, well, when she got on the stage and felt the vibe with the audience, she said, "No, that's going to work. Let's play this one instead." Amazing, man.
Yeah,
amazing.
that's real mastery of the craft of presenting music, which is, I think, there's so many talented young musicians today, but that's a rarity to find a young musician who can really present the music in that way,
Well, the thing about it is, all the people that she worked with, she was Lionel Hampton, man. Lionel Hampton's nothing but show business.
That's right.
I mean, so she came from that, from that era of whoever she worked with. It was for the people. It was a presentation. They wanted the people to feel good because they're going to buy drinks. They're going to have fun. So that means that they have fun when you come back to the club. I mean, when when the club owner's thinking about hiring you, again, they're going to see how much meat is in the seats. They say, "Oh yeah, well yeah, we'll invite them back. The audience really liked them."
Yeah,
it's not like that anymore, man. I mean, to me, most of these guys are playing for themselves. They're not thinking anything about the audience. And in my opinion, they're holding the audience hostage most of the time, man.
Yeah.
But as Art Blakey used to say, maybe we wrong. But getting a chance to play with all those kinds of people, for myself, I got a chance to see that,
Yeah. So, when you guys made that live record, I'm assuming you probably recorded over a few nights. Is that correct? And they kind of took the best of the best. I'm not sure if you even remember that, but
yeah, we were at the Great American Music Hall. I mean, we used to play there, Tom Bradshaw's Great American Music Hall in San Francisco. We used to play there quite a bit.
Is that right?
Yeah. She was well loved in San Francisco. And so she decided to make a record there with her money. That was her record, man. She booked, and in those days it wasn't any digital stuff. She had the truck.
Wow. Yeah.
If you was making, they would have a truck. They had
the remote truck.
The remote trucks. And this was a big truck, man. I mean, and of course, you had to have I guess the permission from the city that was going to be
Yep.
your parking space, because this truck took up about 2 to 3 car lengths.
Yeah, yeah.
She really did it up right, man. And so we recorded on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I think we recorded 3 nights.
Yeah.
There's stuff that's still there's still some things that are unreleased.
Yeah, man. I'd love to hear that, man.
She was thinking about putting out another
wow.
another volume of it, but that never happened. From what I understand, in fact, there's a website called Wolfgang's Vault.
Yeah.
I think that's what it.
Yep.
And somehow or another, I don't know how they did it, but they had, because they have some alternate takes and things from other nights.
There's some video of that as well. There was a person doing some sort of like doctoral thesis or something on either Betty or jazz vocalists, and there's some video of you guys, man.
Well, there was a guy. He was in Philadelphia. He's still around. I saw him about, maybe about 4 years ago, and he was doing a documentary on Betty. Documentary, man. It was incredible, and he was around then, and he filmed. He was friendly with Betty, and he did an interview with her, and then and there was an afternoon. You know what? There was a matinee. There was a matinee on Sunday. And what you see on that video is from the matinee that was done in the afternoon at the Great American Music Hall. That's where that comes from. But there's a documentary that exists, and I saw it, man. I was at the guy's house, and it's great. And he felt that the public radio stations and everything, they were punking him in terms of the amount of money that he wanted. They didn't want to give it to him. So then he said, nah, man, it never, it never came out. And then I saw him again. And by this time, the Nina Simone video, a documentary had come out. I saw him again not long after that, or maybe a little bit before that. I said, hey, man, you might want to consider, putting this out. And so he had been rethinking about it. And he says, yeah, well, maybe the way I was thinking back then is wrong. Maybe I will do something with it. And I tried to help him to get permission from Betty's sons. And I hooked them up, but I never heard anything more. So I don't,
Wow. Well, I hope it comes out one day. That would be a wonderful thing for everybody to be able to see.
Yeah.
So let's move on to some more musicians that you've worked with. So in the earlier parts of your career, I know you played and recorded with both Walter Davis Jr. and Walter Bishop Jr. And I was wondering if you could talk about working with both of those guys. You've worked with so many of the greats as far as jazz pianists go. And those are two gentlemen who unfortunately have been, as you well know, lost to a lot of the history. Could you talk a little bit about working? Let's maybe start with Walter Davis Jr. Could you start by talking about working with him?
Oh, it was great, man. Walter Davis Jr. studied with Walter Bishop Jr. early on.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how I met Walter. First of all, Walter was such a nice man. This guy would walk into the room, and on a rainy day, he would bring the sun in with it. He was just a jovial type guy. And working with him, I really, really got into Bud Powell's music. So because Bud taught him that music. Bud and Walter told me that in the beginning, well, let's just say that Bud used Walter like a guinea pig to test things out. So he needed to have somebody that he could teach the music to. So he taught Walter Davis Jr. the music. And what Bud would do is like, he would have Walter play it, and Bud would just walk around the room. See, so now he's listening to this from a listener standpoint. It's one thing to play it, but how does it sound? Mm-hmm. And he would have him play these pieces, and then he would stop him in certain places. No. Put the third in the bass. Let me hear it with the third. Let me hit it with the third in the bass. And Walter would play it. No. Keep it like it is. Wow. And they would stop him someplace else. And see, so he learned all these different, the insides of Bud's music. Like, I remember we played Un Poco Loco. And so in the bridge, there's this little piano run that's done with the left hand. I didn't really realize that. But then when he was teaching the bass player, he said he wanted the bass player, and I said, damn, and then he would play what was on the top. It was amazing, man. Wow. So I got a whole, a real inside view of the workings of Bud Powell and how he would play, because he learned all that stuff. Later on, Walter told me that he thanked Bud for, at first he didn't like it, but later on he thanked Bud, said, man, thank you for taking me on and insisting that I learn your music. But he had all the insides, man, all the inside voice, everything.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Walter was a great composer himself, and his music is pretty challenging. Could you talk about playing that and learning that stuff?
Yeah, well, yeah, because his music had different forms. It was really different, man. I mean, that music was, but it wasn't hard for the sake of being hard.
Right.
After you got it, it's definitely listenable. But he had a different way of looking at form and tunes, like, those tunes like Uranus.
Yep.
And
Ronnie's a Dynamite.
Yeah, those tunes, man. What's the
Scorpio Rising, all that stuff. Oh yeah. Pranayama, yep. Jody.
Yeah, man. So I'm trying to think, man, I don't know how I can't remember how I met him.
Did you guys rehearse or no?
Oh yeah, well we had to rehearse all that music, man. I mean, I'm trying to think. You know what? I met him because I was playing with Lee Konitz at Sweet Basil's, and Barry Harris was playing the gig.
Wow.
The bass played Piero and myself at Sweet Basil's. And so Barry was playing piano. That's one of the first times I think I ever played with Barry, if not the first time. And so that night, Walter Davis was at the bar having a taste. So Barry was playing. So when the set was over, Walter, hey baby, man, you sound great. La 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 la. We shook hands and everything. Of course, I knew who he was. Like, I already had that record Davis Cup, So, all right. So I go on home. The next night we come back to Sweet Basil's, and Walter was on piano.
Wow.
Barry got sick or something. He sent Walter in as a sub. So Walter played that night with us. Tom Harrell was playing trumpet. That is a hell of a band. Man. And so when the gig was over, Walter, gave me a hug. He says, "Man, I love listening to you, but playing with you is even better. Let me have your number, man. Let me have your number. I got some gigs coming up, man, and I want to rehearse." And so then that's how I started playing with him. And that music, man, was hard, man. That's how Philly Joe Jones started taking me serious.
Ah.
That's how Philly Joe Jones started taking me seriously. Because, Philly Joe started coming back to New York. And of course, I was following him around like a shadow, man. Every time he played at the Vanguard, with Bill Evans, or anytime he played anywhere in New York City, I was there. And so he saw me, and we got to be friendly, So one time I came down to Vanguard. He was playing with Bill Evans. So I had my cymbal bag and walked into Vanguard. So I'm sitting right by the drum corner there, So Joe was setting up his cymbals. He's putting the clutch on the hi-hat. And so then he sees me. He said, "Hey, man, how you doing?" I said, "Joe, I'm doing fine. How are you?" He said, "I'm doing fine." So now he's adjusting his hi-hat. And so then he says, "So I see you have your cymbal bag. Would you have a gig or something?" I said, "No, man, I had a rehearsal with Walter Davis Jr." And he just stopped. he looked me dead in the eyes. "You play with Walter Davis Jr.?" I said, "Well, yeah." And he's just looking at me. He said, "Man, that's my baby, Walter Davis Jr." He says, "Hey, man, is he still writing those hard-ass tunes?" I said, "Yeah, Joe. In fact, I have a whole cassette of them that I have to use. I have to learn for tomorrow's rehearsal." Then he looked at me. He says, "Well, man, if you play with Walter Davis Jr., then you must be a bad mother," So then he just kept staring. And so after that, he started taking me more serious. This is before he heard me play. But after that, that was, sort of kind of his seal of approval, man. I mean, so that's when we started to get a little closer then,
Nice.
But playing with him, man, those tunes, you had the forms of those tunes were very different.
Yep.
So I had to take music home and listen to it, man, And then I would play gigs around New York City. I would play gigs around New York City with him, same thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, man. I was just going to ask, was that cat Tom Barney playing, or were there different bass players? Because I know Tom is on that record that you're on.
Tom Barney was playing electric bass. He was supposed to play, that group was supposed to go on the road with Johnny Griffin when Johnny Griffin first came back to America.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That band trio, because they were trying to find a trio that could keep up with Griff. And they figured that we could do it. Now Tom, I never heard Tom play acoustic bass, but he was supposed to break out the acoustic bass. But that never happened, man, because Babs Gonzalez. Babs Gonzalez, for those of you who do not know who Babs Gonzalez was, he was a lyricist, vocalist,
comedian.
Comedian, he did it all. I mean, he was quite a character, man. I mean, he's one of these New York characters. He could talk himself into a deal and then with his mouth talk himself right out of the same deal, man. He was classic, man. But anyway, Walter Davis Jr. worked with Babs Gonzalez back in the days of 3 bips and a bop.
Yeah.
In fact, Walter told me that they would play 2 to 3 sets and he would have Monk, Bud, and Walter in the car with them to play this gig. Each one of them played a set. Now, this is what Walter told me. I wasn't there, but that's what Walter told me.
That's amazing.
Man, See, so of course, Walter really respected Babs. And so I'm not going to mention this person's name, but they were managing. I'm going to be a nice guy today. Today, it's not here in New York City. So I'm going to be a nice guy.
Not nice is good.
But Babs heard about Walter going out on tour with Griff. And he heard about this person that was supposed to be managing the whole thing. He calls up Walter and says, listen, man, you got to watch this person. Now, I wouldn't trust them no farther I could throw them. And the night before the gig, Walter called up the manager and asked for all this money up front in a certified check. This is the day before we leave for the gig. Uh-oh. I had never gone out on the road before. This would have been my first road gig. And so, of course, there were no ATMs or anything like that happening. So that wasn't about to happen. So I got fired before he said, we the trio. I had nothing to do with it. I was fired before I even met Griff, man. It would take about 2, and then that's when they called Ronnie Matthews. Yeah. And Ronnie Matthews owed me a favor anyway because of a messed up gig that happened up in Harlem. And so I came home, man, and I'd never, like I said, I'd never gone on the road before. And so I remember I was still living with my parents. I remember coming into the house. When I came in the house, I knew something was wrong, man. My mother looked at me. So then I said, well, what's wrong? She says, Walter Davis Jr. called. He wants you to call him. I said, oh, boy. So then he calls me up, and he didn't tell me the whole story. But I ended up being fired. So then 5 minutes later, Walter calls me back up. And he says, man, I got a hot tip for you. I just found out that Ronnie Matthews is going to be the pianist. And so I said, okay, thanks. So I called Ronnie. Like I said, he owed me a favor. So I called him, and he said, well, Wash, it's out of my hands, man. I'm going out there as a pianist, but I'm going to be playing with West Coast Rhythm Section. So he says, if I get in good with Griff, and if I could change the group to be the way I want it to be, I'll call you. I said, okay, fine. So of course, I knew that wasn't going to happen. And then in that same period, man, within a day, I got a call from Sonny Rollins to play Jackie McLean and Betty Carter.
Wow.
All within the same day or two. And so I was going to play with Jackie. And then, but because he was just coming back out on the scene again, okay. Jackie McLean. So, but then Betty called me because I remember picking up the phone and Betty says, hi, I'm Betty Carter. How would you like to play in my band? Wow, man, So then I was going to play with Jackie, but then Betty called me back up and she says, Jackie McLean? Well, he's going to be out here for a little while. He's going to be retired. I got gigs coming up until next year. So that's one of the reasons why I took the gig with Betty.
Gotcha.
But then I was fired with Griff. And Ronnie did call me up a few weeks later. But I was already playing with Betty by that time. So it would take about 2 to 3 years before I would end up playing with Griff. But getting back to Walter Davis, man, man, he was great to be around. His music was fantastic. I mean, it really made you think differently because the forms were different. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, he had taken, I mean, because he's one of the greats who has an unbelievable understanding of the music of Thelonious Monk as well as Bud Powell. And it's interesting how he took all that and learned all this stuff from those two masters, and of course Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and people like that. And he wrote music. Tad Dameron is another one. He was in the Tad as well. And it's interesting how he developed and learned from those composers and came up with something that was very bebop, but it was very Walter Davis Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was great. Bish, I played with Bish. What's we used to call him? We used to call him Bish or Bish Bash. I met him when I played with Bill Hardman and Junior Cook. I met Bill Hardman. It used to be this place called Jazz Mania. It was like at the end of the Loft scene, and it was like on 23rd Street. And this guy by the name of Mike Morgenstern, not Dan Morgenstern, Mike Morgenstern, he was a saxophone player. He owned this loft, and he had this, you would go up these stairs up, to this loft, and he would have these jam sessions. And so out of the blue, he just called me and he said, I says, I have a gig for you playing with it, in a jam session. And so the money was really light. And so I wasn't really interested in doing it. But just as I was about to get off the phone, he said, but wait a minute, I'm going to have Joe Carroll. Who else did he say? Pepper Adams, Andy Bay, and Bill Hardman at this jam session.
Mm.
I said, yeah.
I can do that gig.
With the tight bread, man, maybe, if those guys like me, I might be able to do some gigs with them. And that's exactly what happened. So Bill Hardman was at that gig. And so, I remember Bill said, hey, man, I've never seen you before. You from here? I said, yeah. He says, man, well, give me your number. Man, what are you doing next weekend? Nothing. He said, well, man, I got a gig down at Barbara's. Can you make it? I said, yeah. So he told me how much he was going to get paid. He gave me the address. I get down there, and Walter Bishop was playing piano.
Wow.
And Junior Cook was the tenor saxophonist. Chin Suzuki was playing bass.
Wow. Man.
And so then same thing happened with Bish. He said, man, I never seen you before, man. Where are you from? I said, I'm from New York here. He says, well, man, what are you doing next week? Nothing. Well, man, can you make some gigs with me? And I have a rehearsal because I want you to learn my music. I said, okay. That's how I started working with him. It was like a snowball at the top of the hill, man.
So thinking about both of those guys as pianists, what did you, if anything, did you have to do differently as a drummer, or what did you get from Walter Bishop that you didn't get from Walter Davis as far as being, playing with them as a drummer?
Well, I mean, they were both, of course, coming out of Bud Powell.
Yeah.
For me, in my opinion, at that point, for me, Walter Davis Jr. was a much stronger pianist than Walter Bishop.
Got you.
And Walter Bishop was in the cycle of fourths and cycle of fifths, and he would play things like that. He was great too, man. He was great pianist and a very nice guy. In my opinion, I felt that, I often wondered about him. It just seemed like his best piano playing was like in the fifth when he was with Charlie Parker.
Yeah.
And then he was with Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers too. Few people know that.
I had heard that, but Uh-huh.
He recorded with them too. The
Yeah.
original, or it may not be the original version, but of Horace Silver's tune "May Ray."
Oh
Well,
yeah,
well,
right. Yeah, on the MRC record, right?
the MRC record. That's Walter Bishop on that
Yes.
record, man.
I totally forgot. That's a great record.
Yeah, G.G. Grice
Joe Gordon?
and Gordon. That's right. And Bish is on that record, man.
That's
Bish
right.
played his backside off, man. I mean, if you listen to that tune May Ray, he has the first solo.
Yep.
Man, he dotted out of that during that break. He sounded like a bat out of hell, man, you know. But I don't know, man. I mean, it's hard to say what actually happened, but he wasn't. By the time I got a chance to work with him, even though his music was interesting, he wasn't as strong a pianist as Walter Davis. But I like working with both of them, man. I mean,
yeah,
I like working with both of them.
Great. So let's move on to someone else. Let's talk about your tenure and the record. You made a couple with him, but let's talk about the first one with the great Milt Jackson. Could you talk a little bit about working with him and what you got from working with him, because he was a very unique player?
Man, Milt Jackson, they're two guys, and they were both from Detroit, that every time I work with them, I felt as if I was just like setting up my drums and getting everything set up, put the cymbals in, and just turn around without playing a note and just have to pack them back up again.
Mm.
Time would go so short. I was having so much fun. And as they say, time flies when you're having fun. Those gigs, man, that I made with him, it was it was like 5 minutes, man.
Mm.
I said, what do you mean? Or even a set, I was like, that's all? Damn.
Mm.
I couldn't wait to get on the bandstand the next set or the next night to play with him, man.
Mm.
He was a very nice guy, soulful, man. I mean, he plays like he is. It's the truth, man. It was the truth. Every note he played was truth.
Mm.
I tell you, the thing that was great about Baggs, of course, this is another man who just harmonically, melodically, was just on top of everything. But time, man, his time, the way he would play time, the way he would phrase. And like Thelonious Monk, of course, unfortunately, I never worked with Monk, but Baggs was the same. He would pick these tempos. They call it the in the crack tempos. So it might be, it's not here, ding, 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 ding. It's not ding, 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 but just right in between those two tempos. And Monk would do the same thing. So when I first started working with him, there was this joint called Fat Tuesdays. It was on the East Side. And so it was the first week I worked with him. We're playing along, joint is packed, man. Can't get no more folks in this place. So we're playing along. So he plays his solo. And, the thing about Baggs, he would play at very, very best, 4 choruses. He felt that if you played more than 3 or 4 choruses, you're practicing.
Mm.
Now, of course, he could have played much more than that, but it was amazing. So anyway, he plays his 3 or 4 choruses. And so the pianist was playing. Johnny O'Neill was playing.
Oh, wow.
So now the place is packed. He comes like right on the side of me and whispers in my ear. He says, "Yeah, man, you're pushing the tempo just a little bit, man. Pull it back a little bit. Just pull it back." So I pull the tempo back a little bit. He says, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. He's, yeah, man, that's it. He did just like that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Man, for me,
Wow.
that was that he gave me a lesson, man, that was worth $1 million. Then I really started to understand what he was, what he was talking about.
Mm.
I mean, that was just amazing, man. I mean, to play with him and his stickings, man, the way he would, sometimes I would watch because I can use that as a drummer. The way he would phrase different things.
Mm.
And I would watch the kinds of stickings that he would use. I learned a lot about that. Those mallets, man. Listen, those mallets he used, they used to play, man, things were so heavy, man, you could break your arm with one of them things, man.
Wow.
I mean, that's how it was his touch also, but those mallets were very, very heavy, man.
Wow.
But the way he played with such ease with them.
Yeah.
Because after he got off the bandstand, one time I just picked him up and it felt like he had some steel balls on the end of the thing, man.
Wow.
But then he got that golden sound. And another thing, he was a vocalist,
Absolutely. I have that record from Italy. That's a great record.
Great record. And he also played the guitar too. He played the guitar on the Ray Charles record.
Yeah.
But when he played the vibraphone, he was thinking of the human voice.
Mm.
And so, they have the vibrator thing. There's this little thing that's in the that's part of the mechanical or electronical part of the vibes, and like there's this thing that turns around. Like if you see, it's like in this. Each one of them is like in a cylinder.
Yep.
And this thing turns, and see, so it's a motor, and so when that little thing turns, it I think
the vibrato, right?
Vibrato, but it's the air, and the air makes makes for that sound of the vibrato. See, so now the vibraphonists like Red Norvo and Lionel Hampton and folks like that, if you listen to them, the vibrato was very fast, like the human voice, it's very fast. Milt was actually the first one to slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
So that thing with Lionel Hampton and Red Norvo and those guys, that thing would be turning around real fast. But Baggs had a way of, he would adjust, and there would be an adjustable thing, it's the motor, and it had a knob, and he would turn that thing so that it would go, the thing would turn around and it would go so slow to the point where it would be at the part where it would stop. It was almost off, but it was almost on.
Wow.
And that thing would going around real slow. And that's how he got that. That's one of the ways, one of the reasons why he got that sound like that, man.
Wow.
But man, he was a great person to be around. Man, you talk about somebody that could hear wet paint drying, man. This guy was. One time I was playing Sweet Basils with him. No, it wasn't Sweet Basils. I was playing Blue Note. And so one thing about Baggs, you had to have what he called a zizzle cymbal. In other words, you had to have the cymbal with rivets in it.
Yeah.
If you did not have a cymbal with rivets in it, you were not going to play with him. It's as simple as that. He had to have that. And like Dizzy Gillespie with the trash can cymbal, with the Chinese cymbal,
yep.
When you played with him, he wanted to hear that sound behind him, just like Dizzy wanted to hear that China cymbal sound behind him. So you had to have a zizzle cymbal or a rivet cymbal. So one night, man, so I usually play a rivet cymbal with two rivets. tops 3, man. You don't need any more than that, man. But I usually play with 2. But the guys like Art Blakey that used, you know, he
Sure.
had all the rivets in the cymbal, you know, but that's what he heard. That's his sound. Great sound for him. So I usually play with 2 rivets, but with Bags, he wanted more, man. See, so I would put 5, I think.
Wow.
4 to 5 rivets in it. See, so I had the rivets that you could, you know, take a pliers, you pull them out, put them in, you know, put them in and take them out. So, okay, cool. We're working down at the Blue Note. So we're playing. So the drums were right behind him. He's in the front. So we're playing along. And then he says, he just turned around right in the middle of his solo. He looks at me, washboard. He's calling me washboard. Washboard, you don't have enough zizzles in that cymbal. And he just turned around and starts playing again. And so I'm saying, so okay, that was the last tune of the set. He didn't say anything. So he goes upstairs. And you know what? I happened to look at that cymbal, and it just turns out one of the rivets had come out. It was in the cymbal bag. See, so okay, 5 rivets turns into 4 rivets. Now, see, what messed me up was, how was he able to tell, man? Now, see, that to me was frightening, man. That
That is frightening.
I mean, now, all right, 5 to 3, all right, yeah, you could tell. 2 to 3, you could tell, but it was just one less rivet.
Man.
I saw that rivet in the bag. I said, oh, man, you know, all right, Mr. Rivet, you know, because that can happen. The rivets can just come out, and the rivet was in it. Put the rivet back in, and I went upstairs. You know, he was in the dressing room. Yep. Hey, Bags, man, I'm sorry, man. One of the rivets came out. It fell out of the cymbal. It's in my bag. But I put it back in. I'm sorry, man. You know. But I said, but he said, oh, that's all right. Watch something. How the hell did you know the difference between 4 rivets and 5 rivets?
Man.
And he just looked at me, oh, washboard. He never did answer me, but he knew the difference, man.
Wow.
I said, nah, that's a badass.
Yeah, he is, man, for real. So
yeah.
let's take just a couple minutes. I think the first record you made with him is that record called The Harem, right?
Yeah. Right,
could you talk a little bit about that record? But also, I'm curious as to, since you're on so many records, you always get such a great recorded sound. Could you talk a little bit about recording in general and how you think about it, how you approach it? Is it different than playing a live gig? Talk about that for a while, if you could.
Well, from listening to all the master drummers, the most important thing to me is the sound. And all I wanted to do was to get a sound, a quality of sound like any one of those guys. I don't care. And they're all different, but the quality is what got me, man. You know, whether it be Philly Joe, Jimmy Cobb, you know, A.T., Big Sid, you know, Chick Webb, they're all different, man. But the sound, the quality of sound. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that all those guys have in common is they have good snare drum technique. They worked at that. There's no doubt about it. Elvin Jones too, quiet as it's kept. You know, but then that sound. So when I get in a recording studio, every place is different that you play. The drums are going to sound different in every place. And see, so I'm always trying to get a sound that's in my head, which comes from those masters. As much as possible, that's what I'm that's what I'm trying to do. Now, what they do with that sound, the engineers, that is, that's something else again, man, because they can mess you up. There have been many records that I've been messed up with because nowadays, I've never seen so many deaf engineers in my life. They just don't hear it, man. Well, it's because they don't understand the music. They're into pop music and they don't understand jazz. And not only that, they have too much equipment, man. They have like, at least 10 tracks that they're dealing with, and every one of them has a different component of the drums. But then when they get down to the final mix, they got to work with all these things to get them to sound even. Back in the day, they mixed three track into 2-track. So they had much less to work with. But those engineers back then had a better understanding of the music and how it's supposed to sound. So anyway, when I get into the studio, I'm just trying to get the best sound that I can. And hopefully, after all the years of Wilcoxon and everything, hopefully that has helped me to get a good sound on the instruments. See, so any studio I go into, I'm trying to get a sound like the sound I heard, or the quality. Because I don't have a sound like any of those guys, man. I'm not a genius like that. I don't have those kinds of chops. I wish I did, but I have to work with the little that I have. And so the thing is, but you can still get the quality, the quality of the sound. And that's one of the things that, I try to do playing live or in the recording studio.
So being in the studio is in many ways for you just like playing a live gig where you're just going to adjust to whatever the room is and work with that. Is that, am I hearing you correct?
Yes. You have to work with the room and what's in the room, how it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
But recording is, Ron Carter, man, every time I get around Ron Carter, we always talk about that. And he said this. I didn't say it. He says, recording is hard. That's what he said. And I said, oh, so it's not just me. He said, nah, man, recording is hard because you get into the studio with 4 walls and you're expected to do the best you can when the light goes on. And so it took me a long time. Experience, man, that's what it is to get over that. And for me, because you always feel self-conscious about how you're playing something. It's like hearing your voice on tape, and you try to, but for me, what has helped me all this time is getting to the recording studio early. If the date starts at noon, I want to get there by about 10:15, 10:30. Get a sandwich or whatever it is, look at the paper. I get in there at 10:15, set the drums up, take my time doing it, man. Hit the drums, tune to make sure everything is cool. I'm looking around at the ceilings. What is this place like? How am I going to, and then I can sit back. I go to the store and get a sandwich, sit back, relax, look at the paper, or just sit there by myself, man. And then everybody walks in. Everybody else starts to come in. By this time, I'm already used to the studio. Mm-hmm. My brain is used to what's going to happen. See, so by the time of the recording, by the time that engineer, a lot of times I get there before the engineer.
Yeah.
So he gets sounds on me. I'm waiting for everybody else. I'm there. I'm cool. I'm sitting up there, sitting up in the waiting room or whatever, just sitting back, eating a sandwich. I'm cool. Then come time to date, boom, I'm relaxed. I feel a whole lot better. rather than getting to the date. If the date starts at 12, getting there at 11:30, man, I can't do that, man.
I hear
I
you.
mean, I've done that, and it seemed, but the other thing is also about recording is this. And this is something that, that Roy Eldridge told me a long time ago. He says, either you have your day or you don't, man. Either you have your day. Look, man, there've been some recording sessions that I woke up early, had breakfast, get to the date early, nothing. As far as I'm concerned. And there's been other dates, and I might, traffic or something, I'd huffing and puffing, getting stuff out of the taxi, man, and you do that, all this kind of stuff. I'd get there on time, but I'm really not on time because I'm late, even though I'm there like a half hour before the date, set up and everything, still huffing and puffing. I'm still a little bit nervous. And then, boom, good day.
Yeah.
So Roy Eldridge, I understand. Either you have your day or you don't. It's just, it is what it is, man.
Yeah.
But you try to do the best that you can. But still in all, man, I mean, I always try to get to the date at least an hour and a half before anything goes down.
Yeah. That's good advice, man. That's good advice.
It worked for me, man. I mean,
Yeah. No, that's all good, man. That's what we're here to do, is to get your take. So let's move on and talk about another one of the masters that you've worked with, and that's the great Benny Carter, the King.
Oh man, the King, man.
Because you played and recorded with him in both a small group and a big band setting. Could you talk a little bit about working with him, and what did you learn from working with him?
Well, he's, of course, a gentleman. If I could be half, man, the man that he was, I'd be doing all right, man. Really. To watch him, man, one time I must have just been there at a recording session because, I love this man, I mean, I looked up to him, man. Well, that's why they called him the King. Everybody looked up to the King.
Mm-hmm. When
I made that record with Phil, Phil Woods and Benny, what was interesting is that Phil got there first. Mm-hmm. And, Phil Woods, great alto saxophone player, he could sort of kind of be like, he could sometimes be like a sailor, some
Yeah.
He could be kind of gruff. That's the word I'm looking for.
Oh yeah.
Gruff. But a beautiful cat though, and he might, now Benny Carter was in there, so he's talking trash, he's cursing and everything. Benny Carter walked in, man, and I could see a halo on Phil's head. And everything was, and for real deal, everything was, the respect was incredible. There was no more cursing. There was none of that. Which part would you like for me to play, Mr. Carter? Everything was yes, Mr. Carter, no, Mr. Carter. That's the kind of respect, man. I mean, when Phil Woods does that, but I felt the same way about him. And he, I remember one time, it must have been one of those record dates or something. I'll never forget this, man. I'm sitting up there talking to him, right? But he's writing some music. Or maybe I was just in the studio. I can't, but anyway, I saw him do this. So then we were talking about Dizzy Gillespie. So then he says, so now I'm standing there next to him and he's writing. So now I'm trying not to, interrupt him from what he's doing because he's writing music out. So then he says, well, how's Dizzy? Or he's asked me some questions. So he says, well, and I said, I was answering him real short. Yes, no, So then he turns around, he looks up to me, he looks over his glasses. He says, man, what's wrong, man? You don't want to talk to me? I said, well, Mr. Carter, I see you writing music. I'm trying not to interrupt you, man. He says, oh, nonsense. So then how's Dizzy doing? Have you seen him? I said, oh yeah, well, I saw him, I saw him a couple of weeks ago. He was in New York City. Oh yeah? Yeah, well, he was out in Cal and he's writing while he's talking.
Wow.
Man, he put that music on the stand for the guys to play. That stuff was perfect, man.
Man. Wow. Unbelievable.
That's bad, and that's real bad, dude. But he's. I'll tell this story because I've told this before, man. I mean, but he was a lifesaver for me, man, because this was a real. This is a real what I would call, well, actually what Ron Carter would call. He was a real man. He said that. Ron Carter said that about Coleman Hawkins.
Wow.
But Coleman Hawkins and Benny Carter, they're cut from the same cloth. I mean, those two, But anyway, those are real men. I'll tell the story. I've told it before, man. But to show you how he was, how smart this cat was, I came to a recording session that he was doing with this big band, and Mel Lewis was the drummer.
Was that the Central City Sketches record?
Central City Sketches, that recording session.
That's a great record, man.
Yeah. That was at Clinton Sound Studios. So I was going through a nasty divorce, man. I mean, it was nasty. You take off the Y, you put 3 E's on the end. Nasty, Woo! And so anyway, that record date was like on either a Saturday or a Sunday. So I came up there to see both Mel and Ron was on that date too.
That's right.
And Benny Carter. So I came up there, and so, man, I mean, I was having some rough times, man. So I walk into the studio, and it was during a break. So there's Benny. He's talking to some people. So he looks around and he sees me, and he's talking to these people, and like all of a sudden he says, excuse me. I didn't hear him, but he was like saying, excuse me. He walks over to me and he gives me a big hug. And he looks me dead in the eye and he says, young man, I heard all that's happened to you. I heard all about it. So I don't know if it was Mel that told him about it or who it was. Maybe they were talking and Benny asked how I was doing and probably Mel said, well, man, he's going through some changes, man, So Benny says, man, I heard all you've been going through. He said, man, don't let it bother you. He said, give her what she wants. It ain't nothing but cheap dollars. That's exactly what he said.
Wow.
And I didn't really know what that meant at the time. He said, ain't nothing but cheap dollars, man. Let it happen. And so then we went on talking. He said, well, man, I asked him, I said, well, man, what's your secret, man? I said, I think at that time he was like in his 80s, but he looked like he was like in his 50s. I said, Mr. Carter, what is your secret? He said, listen, Wash, I'm telling you, I told you, I'm going to tell you again. I don't let anything bother me, man. I said, I don't let anything bother me. And see, so he had the same thing happen to him years before. He said, man, he said, I don't let any of that kind of stuff bother me, man. He says, and remember one thing. He says, remember one thing. He says, don't keep no hate in your heart. It will kill you quick from cancer. That was really something for him to tell me that,
Hey man, could you say that one more time?
you know.
The internet was slowing
And
down. Could you say that one more time? What he said to you?
okay, okay, yeah. So he said, man, I don't let anything bother me, man. He says, and remember one thing: don't keep no hate in your heart. It will kill you quicker than cancer.
Mm,
Man, I mean, that was really deep, man. That was really
that's
deep because that's exactly how I felt, boy. I
mm,
mean, and so we talked for a little while longer. So months later, I get a call to work with him at man, what was it? There was a joint that was on Sixth Avenue and Carlos One. Carlos One. There was a
oh
club called Carlos. I got a call to work with him, but it was a conflict. I was working up the street with Tommy Flanagan at the Vanguard, so I couldn't make the gig. But anyway, I showed up early, to see Benny, just to see him, to say hi. So there he is upstairs in the dressing room. And so by this time, I mean, yeah, I had to go through court and everything, but everything turned out all right, I guess, well as could be expected. So he could see me, my reflection in the mirror coming into the dressing room. And he sees me and he says, yeah, see, didn't I tell you, you all right now, huh? You all right? Are you okay? I said, yeah. See, what did I tell you, man? Wash, what did I tell you? See, didn't I tell you? I said, yeah, Mr. Carter, you were right, Yeah, man, man, I mean, he was beautiful, man. Just,
yeah. As a drummer playing with him, was there anything you had to do differently behind him, or was there anything that he asked for, from you? No.
no, I mean, no, he never asked for anything like that. He wanted you to play. He basically wanted you to play your way. But for me, man, I was always mindful of those guys. See,
Yeah.
I listened to them so much that I knew what was expected of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, okay, you don't play for Benny Carter the same way you would play for Charles McPherson.
Right.
It's apples and oranges. I mean, they're both very good, but both very different styles. And so, with all those guys, I came in there knowing what I had to do. I knew what the style was going to be. Benny was very open to a lot of different things. But I mean, you're not going to come in there bashing and crashing. You're going to come in there, tipping like, the guys that had played with him, in the past.
You know,
You know,
yeah, it's funny, man. I think a lot, especially a lot of younger drummers, I think a lot of them feel like when they're playing with someone that they, to do a good job, especially, we're talking about jazz. I think a lot of them feel like they have to really sort of push everybody that they're playing, push and push and push. And with some artists, that's true. Some artists want to feel that, but a lot of artists, it's not about that. And with guys like Milt Jackson or Benny Carter or Tommy Flanagan, I don't think those guys were looking for that, right?
no, they weren't looking for that. But you see, that's the sad part about it because there's not many of those guys around.
Right, right.
So there's not many of those guys around anymore. I mean, so so these guys they're one trick ponies, man. In my opinion, they're
Yeah,
playing one way and they don't know any of the other styles. But see, I caught the tail end, man. I was very, very lucky.
yeah,
I caught the tail end of being able to play with Johnny Griffin and Eddie Lockjaw Davis. Those guys want you to hit it, man.
sure.
It's moody, but then you have somebody like Benny Carter, where you just have to. They want you to swing and have a good time, nice sound, and accompany play for them. You
Yeah,
got Sometimes you have to play for each person that you come in contact with. It is not your show.
yeah,
You know, You are the sideman, and the most important thing is for you to think about how to best make the leaders of these bands sound, or better still, how can you make the band sound the best that it could sound? It's not about you, it is about the music.
Yeah.
And it's the same playing these different rooms, man. You know,
Yeah.
everybody's out to try to impress, man. I mean, but you know, you got to play the situation. See, so for all those guys, you know, for me, you know, I wanted to be like a Grady Tate or O.C. Johnson, to come in and play in any situation, play behind a singer, play behind a trio, play swing, you know, and next thing you know, I'm playing, you know, playing bebop. I never forget, man, one time I was playing with Hank Jones at the Museum of Modern Art. And then from there, I took my drums and went right down to the Vanguard to play with Tommy Flanagan.
Mm.
Two different ways of playing. One doesn't work for the other. Mm-hmm. You have to play a different style with Hank than you did with Tommy. Both of them are great. It's apples and oranges. They both taste good.
Mm-hmm.
You have to figure out what works for one that won't work for the other.
Yeah.
And I never forget coming down 7th Avenue in a taxi saying, man, pinch me, man. I had to play with two of the greatest pianists of all time, man. Back to back, man, going to work and getting paid for it too, man. I mean, but you know, it's always important to know, you know, the different styles of who you're playing with, man, you know.
Yeah.
And it's important. Music has changed quite a bit, but hey, listen, you know, these styles come back to kick you in the butt, man. So you have to know them. I mean, you know, you might think that, you know, and you don't know what you're going to be doing. See, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
You know, everybody, all these, you know, I in school all the time. These guys have grand illusions inside out. You, to keep the lights on and keep your stomach from rumbling, you might have to play with a piano trio. You might have to play with a pianist that's playing in the style of Earl Hines. Maybe. It's not Herbie Hancock, it's Earl Hines. Both of the styles are just as great as the other, man. I mean,
that's right.
But you got to play with them. And the more people that you learn how to play with, the better off you're going to be. And that's something that Mel Lewis taught me a long time ago.
Yeah. No, I think that's the ultimate advice, man, is listen and learn, as Philly Joe said to you.
Listen, watch, and learn. He always used to
yeah, man.
Thanks for having me. And drummers, do the homework, man. Do the homework, please. I beg you. I beg of each and every one, do the homework and learn the snare drum. Learn the basics, man. I beg you to learn the basics. Learn who Kenny Clark is. Learn who Big Sid Catlett is. I mean, really know their records, be able to tell who each one of these people are. I beg you, man, because that's going to help you out. You might not think so now, but that's going to help you out immensely.